say again, greed creates terrorism, and the two together create poverty, extremes of poverty. And you have to stop this greed that's going on. Okay. So, what is poverty? I guess that, this is human rights as well. Please understand this. You do not separate poverty, you do not separate war crimes from human rights, because they're all interwoven. So, poverty is hunger, poverty is lack of shelter and housing, poverty is being sick and not being able to see a doctor. Poverty is not having access to a school and not knowing how to read. Poverty is not having a job. The fear for the future, living one day at a time, not knowing if there is a tomorrow. Poverty is losing a child for simple illness. Lack of access to drinking water, clean air, constraints of work, poverty, all this leads to depression, and depression leads to suicide. So that's basically it. But however, to bring this down to earth, I thought I would read a little story. I've had to hide the gentleman's name, but this is an Afghan guy, young guy, living in my city of Derby, who is about to be returned to Afghanistan in the most deplorable circumstances. And this is the appeal that I wrote for this guy. Community appeal regarding Mr. X, I've called him, because obviously for security reasons I wouldn't like to mention it. Derby Afghan Community Association cares about all vulnerable Afghans in the city in order to prevent them from begging on the streets or being exposed to other dangers and causing problems to the whole community. Mr. X arrived in Derby and joined the Derby Afghan community whilst waiting for documentation regarding his asylum in the UK. He started work as a volunteer with refurbishing of premises, organising open days, and participating in general community work. A good character, doing the right thing. However, after opening of the centre, some members noticed in the community that this gentleman was succumbed to really strange irregularities. His talk and his terminology and the way he was portraying himself would indicate he was under some sort of duress or some mental disability, possibly relating to the war. He just escaped here, and obviously he's got a lot of trauma. There is no system in the UK, for instance, for looking after people that have come from a trauma area. How can a doctor talk to an Afghan refugee who's just come through decades of war? How can they understand him? They're not on the same frequency. So you need specialists to be able to, debrief. You know psychology. It's very important for these people. Okay, so after the opening of the centre, the members noticed that there was something strange about this gentleman. He was changing. He told the people of Derby that Derby was a holy place. He could see saints flying down from heaven, but he wasn't a Christian. He also had a loss of sense of time. He never knew whether it was morning, day. He had no idea of what time of day it was. And people were becoming very concerned. He even went into shops and started taking things off the shelf and walking out. Maybe he thought everything was free of charge. But, mentally you've got to understand where he was coming from. And then he would start placing goods on different shelves. He would move the sauce to the pickles and the pickles to the breakfast cereals and start changing. Then he started changing the price tags. That's a good idea, actually, when you think about it. No, I shouldn't say that, but you know what, it's just my humour, excuse me. Okay, so then all the people in the area where he was living, he got a name. They all say, Mr. X is coming down. What's your shop? What's your pocket? What's your price tags? Because he was changing everything. Anyway, they eventually got him into an emergency unit in the hospital because his health was really deteriorating. I must emphasise this is a result of the war. It was not related to a mental incapacity. It's what he'd experienced. He's not been debriefed. He'd got no psychological help, so he was on a plummet down. No way up, only down, and despair and suicide. The results from the blood test, however, showed that his blood circulation, believe it or not, had reversed. And that's a very dangerous situation for the human body. So when your blood purifies your body, if you reverse it, you're not cleansing your body, you're contaminating it in every sense of the word. So he was deteriorating very rapidly, so that he ended up in the intensive care unit at the point of death. Remember, this is an asylum seeker, okay? Very young, 22 I think. So the members of the community decided to get behind this guy and help him. After some days, the decision was made to send him to a special psychiatric unit. He went through various mental health assessments. He was kept under lock and key, like there was something wrong with him. So he was imprisoned again. He just escaped from the prison of Afghanistan to end up in the psychiatric prison. And anyway, they considered that he was a very vulnerable member of the community. So they relocated him from all of his friends, all of the people that loved him, that he'd worked with, and they relocated him to Bradford, where he's got no friends and no contacts. Think about it, human rights. Is this right? It happens here as well, remember. So he was sent to a special unit, and eventually they returned him, after lots of pleas and hard work by the community, they returned him to Derby to another psychiatric unit. Then, after some treatment, he started to get better. People in the community started to respect him. There wasn't a day went by where he wasn't helping somebody, even providing meals to old people and homeless. So he was a good member of the community. Okay, and suddenly, as he was starting to get better and become a valued member of the community, he received a letter from the Home Office. Your application is refused. You're going to go back to Afghanistan. Now, if you evaluate that with his state of health, if you return a person who's under intense medical care, especially psychiatric care, and you put him back to Afghanistan, he's going to die. You know that. He's not going to get that support. He's not going to get those medications. So the whole community who loved this man now as a member of the family witnessed his remarkable recovery process, but then this sort of nail in the coffin that he was going to return. And he may have returned now, I don't know, because I haven't had time to follow this stuff. So I wrote this letter for them. We talked about his mental health. I don't know whether you know the law of this country, but we are not allowed to send anyone back if there is a possibility that they're going to get some death sentence or some very painful experience. It's against our law to do that. So technically this man should not return, because when he goes back, because he won't get the medical care, he's going to die. And in our society we can't do that. So basically it finishes off, on behalf of the Afghan community, I kindly appeal to the authorities and the officials involved in making this final decision of Mr. X deportation to be reviewed as a matter of urgency. This is a humanitarian situation, and if the young man returns to Afghanistan, he will not live. This is one of thousands upon thousands in every country, even in England. This is just one man, 23 years of age, who escaped his country because of war and turmoil to get a better life that you all got. This man is now going back. Think about your own situation. How would you feel if you were forced to return to Afghanistan? Think about it. It's horrific. So that's basically it. There's a lot more on here, but I wanted to throw it in the rubbish bin because I like to do things naturally. Okay, so that's the true picture in Afghanistan today.